Hello, hello. Welcome back to another exciting episode of 7 Minutes, where we take at least 7 minutes or longer, usually an hour and a half, usually 2, to get through our topics. I am one of your 4 hosts, as you know. I'm Angela.
Hi, Angela.
Hi, Zack.
I'm Zack.
Hello, guys. It's been a while. This is Dom.
Well, hi, it's Robert.
And we're here. Got a lot to discuss. It hasn't been as long as it normally goes between episodes for us. Last time we recorded was June.
So it has been 3 months.
Yeah, it's, end of September.
6.
Yeah.
Not 6.
Yeah. Or, I think there have been times where it was even longer.
We were at 4 to 5 months last time.
Yeah.
And then if you count the dark year too, where we did
Yeah.
but first year very strong, had 20 episods. Year 2 it was 2 or 3 episodes. So
We
doing
gotta
better
do
than
better,
that.
guys.
We're doing
Yeah.
better than that.
Yeah.
Let's do better. Collectively. Come on.
So now we're 3 months in. It's been 3 months since our last episode. And a lot has actually happened in these 3 months. A lot. And that's actually going to be our subject for the day. Normally we have our topic, whatever it is that we want to talk about. But there's just been so much going on, so many implosions happening within the industry. We just have a lot to talk about. So that's going to be the topic of discussion today, is just the absolute state of the industry. That's probably what I'm going to title this episode. But before we get there, we of course got to talk about what we've been playing. I guess I'll just kick us off. I believe at the time of the last recording, I had just started Paper Mario and the Thousand Year Door, the port, the not remake, remaster. Thank you.
Did it have a fancy title? Is it remastered, or is it just the Thousand Year Door?
Just Paper Mario and the Thousand Year Door.
Time is endless and circular, though.
Well, that's it's Super Mario RPG: The Legend of the Seven Stars on SNES, but I think it's just Super Mario RPG on the Switch. So a more significant name change, but also not. They're keeping the names of their remasters pretty simple. But yeah, I finished that. It was really, really, really good. Reviewed it for Nintendo Joe. Really solid remaster. Keeping my review here, pretty concise. It was. I had some concerns because of how the remaster of, or rather, the remake of Paper Mario went, or of Mario RPG went. I was worried that it was going to have some of those issues. It did to some degree. It has the new soundtrack, which is inferior, just like with what happened with Mario RPG. But you can get a badge that you can wear, and it doesn't take any badge points, and it lets you have the soundtrack be the original soundtrack the whole time.
I have an option.
Yeah.
It's a little tangential. Can anyone name any remaster ever where the soundtrack they drummed up for the remaster was better than the original?
Ever.
Right, and I was about to ask, the Nintendo especially, they keep doing it, so someone must like it, right? Someone out there prefers it?
Yeah, Nintendo also has their weird mindset where it's why do you like the old stuff? Don't you like the new stuff? It always has to be new, and they don't understand that new is not always better. I would say, even though it's not really the same thing, but a lot of the tracks for Final Fantasy VII Remake and Rebirth are very, very good versions of the original, but I still do think that the original soundtrack is still the best.
Probably why, honestly, because most of the time remasters are kind of quick cash grabs, even if they're well done, right? You're not putting your A-team on it. Rebirth was kind of unusual in that they put their A-team on it.
Yeah. Well, soundtrack aside, there were just some really minimal issues for me with Paper Mario. It was otherwise a very solid remaster, very solid, and I loved it. It reminded me of why I loved this game so much to begin with. The original on the GameCube, just a great experience overall. Definitely recommend that if you, regardless of whether you've played it or you're just curious about it, pick it up. It was super great. After that, I started playing Wukong. Wukong is amazing. It's an incredibly beautiful game, super fun. It is another Souls-like, so that's a bit challenging for me. I have not finished it, but I've put a decent amount of time into it, and I've really enjoyed my time with Wukong. I think that it was just this surprise, game that kind of came out of nowhere when it was announced, and then it finally launched, and I just think that it's a really great game. Good challenge, difficult, but I'd like to be better at Souls games, so playing that game has just been a really enjoyable experience. And then last thing I've played was Emio. It's like Emio the Smiling Man, Famicom Detective Club. It's a visual novel. I have not played the original 2 Famicom Detective Club games that came out. Nintendo remade those for the Switch. They were originally on the Famicom. They're visual novels, centers around this detective agency, the different mysterious cases that they look into, and I think they all have some sort of kind of supernatural element, or what you think might be supernatural going on in the story. This is the first new one in, I think, 35 years. It was really strong. I had never, the closest thing to like a visual novel that I had ever played was Phoenix Wright. And it does have some kind of Phoenix Wright-ish elements in it. Or I guess you could say Phoenix Wright has some Detective Club elements in it. But I went in with no expectations. I just thought that the trailer looked really intriguing, looked pretty cool. So I reviewed it for Nintendo Joe. And it is one of the few games that's ever made me cry. I will say the subject matter is, it's pretty heavy. It's not what I was expecting. I thought it was going to be your typical, like, again, creepy, perhaps like supernatural, focused kind of crime detective story. And what it ends up becoming is this very tragic case. And it focuses on a lot of, as I said, heavy subject material. Focuses primarily on abuse, physical abuse, especially domestic abuse, abuse towards children, some veiled mentions of sexual abuse, that's very minor, but part of one character's backstory. And in particular, the long-term effects of very serious, very intense, long-term physical abuse towards children. The game also, I think, directly criticizes a lot of elements of Japanese society. And I think we, as Americans and non-Japanese, we romanticize Japan a lot. It's hard not to. Japan is a pretty incredible place. I certainly... if America was no longer a viable place to live and I had to leave the United States, I'd want to go live in Japan. That's how much I love that country, just the time that we spent in it. But Japanese culture does have some aspects of it that are troubling and that are not good, and we saw some of that when we were in Japan. One of the things that the game focuses on is the consequence of turning a blind eye to things that you should not be turning a blind eye to. And we actually saw this when we were in Japan. We were in Tokyo, and we were coming out of the train station, and we were coming up the steps, like going back up to the street level. And there was a young woman, and it looked like she had been clubbing or partying the night before, and she was laying across one of the steps. I legitimately thought she was dead. That is how stone stiff she was. And there was a security guard and a janitor that were looking at her from afar. But all these people were walking past her, and they weren't even looking at her. It was like she wasn't even there. And the difference between how she probably would have been treated in the US and there was that she had her purse, she had her phone, it had fallen onto the step below her. Nothing had been stolen. She didn't look like she had been touched, but people were acting like she wasn't there. Very much not my problem. I don't think anybody called an ambulance. It was just the janitor or the security guard happened to stumble upon her. And there is kind of this not my business, not my problem, or I'd be overstepping a boundary by intervening here, which is actually what one of the characters says when you start to learn about what's going on in the story, is that there was a history of extreme violence towards one of the characters as a child. And one of the people who's getting interviewed, who's an older person, said, we knew that this abuse was happening in this person's household, but it wasn't our place to say anything. So there's that criticism of Japanese police, who are pretty notorious for not taking sex crimes or abuse towards especially women seriously, stalking cases, etc. That comes up in a character's backstory, and she really, really hates the police as a consequence of that, and that actually ties into some of what's going on in the story and some of the gameplay. So just very, very heavy stuff, and when you realize what actually happened, you come to the conclusion of the case. It was pretty crushing, and it was just really incredibly sad. And, it's all fiction. It's not, none of it's real, but it also touches on the extremely heavy expectations that are put on Japanese students. These are very young people, they're teenagers, and from a very young age, they're being pushed to be academically excellent. And not everybody is. That includes Japanese people. It's a stereotype, but not every Asian person is a whiz. And for the kids that are just not very academically inclined, it can lead to suicidal thoughts and tendencies, and there is a problem with suicide in Japan, and especially among young people. And so this game also touches on that as well. So it's all just a very poignant, very interesting game, and it really left an impression on me. I've actually been wanting to write some more stuff about it. I'm just not exactly sure how to get all my thoughts out on paper, but gave it a very good, strong review for Nintendo Joe. But yeah.
Question.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any decisions in the game that you can make that will impact the story, or are there multiple endings that you know of?
I know that there are some things that can happen that they don't have lasting consequences. It's kind of more like a funny Easter egg that can happen if you make certain decisions, but I don't know if the ending is at all impacted by decisions that you make. There was some post-game content that unlocked. It's an epilogue that I wasn't expecting. And I'm pretty sure it probably plays out the same no matter what. The epilogue was interesting, though, because it continues some of the standard gameplay, but then there was an anime attached to it, and the anime fills in some unanswered questions about the main gameplay. And so I thought that was very interesting watching it. And this is a mature-rated game for Nintendo. Sakamoto of Metroid fame, this is kind of his baby, and he wrote this story. I think he may have written the original too as well. So that's pretty interesting too. But yeah, that's kind of what I've been up to. Robert?
Astrobot's really good. I think I'm into the second galaxy or world or whatever you would describe it as. It definitely has some similarities to, it's a platformer. Everything's similar to Mario in that regard, but kind of sort of reminds me of the Galaxy games a little bit. It's beautiful. It has very clever platforming mechanics. And what's interesting is that a lot of the abilities that Astrobot has are temporary. So you'll enter a world, and that world will allow you to use these extending arms that he has access to sometimes, or like a rocket pack. But he doesn't have them in every world. So it makes it feel more special when you're using them, because it's not like a constant ability that he has. So yeah, I think in that regard it's really well done. The only complaint I can think of is there's something about it that feels just a little tiny bit sterile. And I don't know if I can explain it particularly well, but it feels, it's beautiful, it's really neat looking, but it also feels a little hollow, if that makes any sense. But it's a great game. It's definitely worth picking up. I just started playing Echoes of Wisdom, which is the new Zelda game, and that game is also pretty good so far. I would say that I can already tell it's going to suffer from one of the problems that Tears of the Kingdom has, which is an odd inventory system. So Zelda gets these things called echoes, which is basically she just scans something and then she can use her staff to make it appear. So if she scans a table, boom, she can make a table pop up. And you can do things like stack them in order to traverse the environment. So it's like, oh, I can't reach up that high. Well, stack a bunch of tables and then you'll get there. That kind of thing. All this is cool, but The problem is it's just like Tears, where you have to scroll through individually every item. Now, there is, don't quote me, I'm like I said, I'm just starting it. If I'm remembering correctly, once you've selected an item, it moves to the closest slot for you to access again. So if you create a stone, that will be right there on the scroll wheel for you to just flick right back over and get it. But if you, like, now I need a trampoline, gotta scroll all the way through. And it's just tedious. And just like Tears of the Kingdom, I look at it and think, this could benefit from let players customize this portion of it. Or have the option to. So it's like, maybe it gives you a slot of 5 or 10 items that you can just whittle it down to that you use regularly, but they don't do it. Don't understand why. It's incredibly annoying.
I don't know if this is going to be true in Echoes of Wisdom, but in Tears, I think there were a few different ways you could sort the long. I was going to call it a wheel, but like that long horizontal menu.
Yep.
And one of them is most recent, which in practice I think was like the best for quick access. If there like a few stock things that you kept using for arrows or construction or whatever. So if you have certain favorites and you use that sorting system, it probably helps a little. But I definitely agree. This was a headache in Tears. As soon as I saw a screenshot of Echoes of Wisdom that had that same UI, I was like, oh God.
I'm not even through the first dungeon, and I think I already have 20 things I can chunk. So I can only imagine that list is going to grow.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you can sort it at all, but it's an annoying thing, because it's like you can't tell me that no one at Nintendo heard complaints about that. And then they go and make this game and then don't tweak it. Well, like, that's annoying.
It especially seems just like a very common sense thing. Like you wouldn't even need beta testers to determine this. Just somebody on the development team that's like, hey, is this getting a little big? Anyone think so? Anyone but me?
It's odd, because I just kind of look at it and think there's no way that people on staff weren't thinking that. Like, you're sitting and playtesting your own stuff. You're making sure everything works. You're telling me that none of you, while you were going through it, were like, maybe we should whittle this down or give players an option to customize. But so that was a little frustrating. It does seem like it's trying to mix in some Tears of the Kingdom elements. There's an ability that your partner character is named Try. He can possess like an object, I guess enemies too. And what you do is it's what's allowing you to like lift and move things. I forget what that's called in Tears, but I just moved like a giant rock, for example, by possessing it with Try. And then I'm like moving around and it's following me. That's cool. It's interesting because it's not something that we've seen in a 2D Zelda game. But and then last thought on it is performance. So I've been playing undocked mostly so far. And Zack had asked me if it was performing all right. And I said, well, so far it has. But now I'm a little further in. And again, still undocked. And I am noticing there is a little bit of stuttering here and there. So as far as I can tell, this was built with the same engine as Link's Awakening, the remake that's on Switch. So it's kind of annoying that we're years removed from that game and they haven't figured out the performance issues with it. And there's an odd visual gimmick that they have in this engine, and it was in Link's Awakening as well, where the center of the screen is sharp, but there's almost this vignette thing going on where the outer edges are not focused. They're actually blurred. So as you're going along, you can see that the center is clear and the edges are just a little bit distorted. I have no idea why. It's an odd choice. And it's not necessarily distracting, but I will see it here and there and kind of wish it wasn't there. So
maybe because it's on the Link's Awakening engine, you're going to find out that this was all a dream. And so the edges are blurred because it's dreaming.
Well, see, it made sense in Link's Awakening because I would associate it with something like that. You're in a dream world and blah, blah, blah. Spoilers, sorry, it's been 30 years, but if you didn't know, Link's Awakening, it's a dream. But here, I don't think it's a dream, so it's like, why is this here? It's like, it's just an unnecessary detail. But anyway, it's pretty good. I've been playing... I started Black Myth Wukong, finally. And just that opening battle was pretty cool. That's about as far as I've gotten, though. So I've got Black Myth going. I have a few games that like I need to like get into that are just sort of sitting there on my PlayStation. Black Myth is one. Stellar Blade is one. So what else have I played? I think the last thing I'll talk about, I got through Ace Attorney Investigations collection. So that's really good.
Is that's the Miles Edgeworth games?
So that's the Miles Edgeworth spin-off game. So if you've ever played Ace Attorney and you like those games, this is the 2 spin-off games that were on DS. We actually only ever got one of them in the West. It was the first, and then the second one was never localized. So this is the first time it's officially been localized. Really well done. My only main complaint is I didn't like you can have the pixelated versions of the character sprites. So they tend to hand draw all the assets for these remakes. The entire series is on Switch now, by the way, and PlayStation. I don't think is Ace Attorney on Xbox? I don't think they brought it on there. I might be wrong. I know
it is.
It is, okay. So like you can get the whole thing on modern consoles, but for all of them, they don't give you the option to have the authentic pixel graphics, which I find really frustrating because I love that look way more than these hand-drawn versions. But this one, and for whatever reason, they decided to let you have access to the pixels, which is cool, but like the backgrounds don't really match. So like I'm like looking at it on my screen, I'm almost positive it's either not pixelated or maybe a little bit pixelated, and I'm just like, just make the whole thing pixels. Like, this is what I want to see. That's what made the visuals special. But anyway, good writing. It's slightly different from the Ace Attorney games because you're not in court. You're actually physically walking around inside of environments, which is very different from the static kind of menu navigation system that you have in the other games. So anyway, it's very good and definitely worth picking up. And I think that's all I've played that's worth mentioning.
All right. What about you, Dom?
Cool. Yeah, so I'll talk quickly about a couple games I beat since the last time I recorded. All of them are actually releases this year, so that's kind of relevant. The first I'll go over Pepper Grinder. It's 2D platformer. Basically, the main gameplay element is you have this like oversized drill that'll sort of propel you through, sand or dirt, sort of like free fall almost. You lose control a little bit. You can still control your character, but you can't control how fast they are or whatever till you exit out of the sand or dirt, whatever. I thought it was very good. The boss fights were okay. I liked the platforming aspect of it better than the combat itself. One part that really stood out to me was that you could sort of upgrade your drill in certain, spots of the level, and you could turn it into a machine gun, or I forget. And I think it turns into like a vehicle.
Yeah, there's like a mech you can pilot, right?
Yeah, the mech was cool too. I felt like it mixed it up enough for me, where it wasn't dry. The completion was very quick. I think I completed in like less than 10 hours.
Yeah, it's super short. There's something like 20 or so levels total.
Yeah. I mean, I would love to see some DLC or something later.
Yeah.
I thought it was really well done. The art style was fine. The soundtrack is pretty cool too.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I'll keep it brief on that one. Another one was Cat Quest 3. I played that one completely co-op with my son. I felt like it was very charming. The writing was really well done. There were parts I was cracking up. I think that it's the perfect entry RPG for a younger crowd. I think it's rated teen, but if you've never played an RPG before, it's a quick intro to it. There are side quests, there are RPG elements as far as wear this hat and your fire damage goes up and stuff like that. And so Isaac, that's his first RPG, and he was pressing the start menu. He's like, oh no, I want to wear this one. This one was stronger. So I felt like it was a pretty good segue into that genre.
Did you say Hat Quest?
Cat Quest.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Yeah,
okay.
Cat Quest 3.
Okay.
So I played the second one.
Yeah.
I never played the original.
Well, I was going to say, we're living our own Cat Quest here in this house with
All these-
five now.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. Like I said, the writing, kept things fresh, and it is challenging. That your level, barricaded. So like if you try to go explore the north, their enemy is level 50 and you're level 12. So it will tell you can't go this way. You die right away. So that's cool. So that's Cat Quest 3. I beat Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown, which is another 2D platformer. And it was much better than I anticipated. I really enjoyed everything about it, pretty much. I played on hard difficulty, which I feel was perfect. If I had played any lower, it would have been too easy.
Okay.
I don't think that's sold crazy well from what I know, but I've only heard good things about it.
Agreed, yeah. Every review I've seen and anybody who I've heard talked about it pretty positive.
Yeah.
And I have nothing bad to say about it. I loved the boss fights. I mean, the voice acting was kind of the story was kind of but that wasn't the appeal at all. The once you start unlocking all of the traversal tools and moves you can do, it really opens it up. There's a lot of backtracking. Like, it is truly Metroidvania style. Like, you will go all the way to the right and find out you need something else to keep going. You have to backtrack. Yeah. The fast travel system could use some work for sure, and if you play it, you'll know what I mean. Okay. There's no way to just go to fast travel on the spot. You have to be at like a fast travel location, which is fine. I just feel like there aren't enough of them. Okay. Like, I would pull up my map. I'm like, oh my God, the next fast travel point is all the way up there. I'm like, I'm saving and quitting right now. I just don't feel like backtracking that. Yeah, it gets tedious there. But other than that, it was excellently done. After that, I played Astrobot. So that was a game I actually completed. I think I completed it last weekend, and it's officially my 3rd platinum. I no-lifed that game, even though it was only about 20, 25 hours. That game, what Robert was saying, was on point. There are lots of callbacks to Mario Galaxy for sure. The collecting aspect with all the PlayStation iconic characters in the gacha machine, similar to the Astro Playroom that was the PS5 demo. There's a lot of collecting and stuff like that. That, I would say, was my game of the year, like, so far.
Astrobot?
Yeah. Okay. It's just so beautiful, and the graphics, and it's just the controls are so tight. Like, everything, was 1-to-1, if that makes sense. Nothing felt floaty, nothing. Yeah. And all the little power-ups that Robert was describing, you get a lot more throughout the game, as you get through all the galaxies. But yeah, just the fact that you can only use it during that level, kept it fresh. And, there was never a time where you had to, let me equip this, or you keep it forever. I think they did it just right.
Okay.
Yeah, it also, not to interrupt, but I'm also kind of just forgetting that was made by a small studio, too, which just makes it even more kind of astounding that this tiny team built this game, and it's just so impressive. And all those throwbacks to the PlayStation history is part of what makes it so special. Like, you have the little Astrobots that look like characters from older PlayStation games, and so it's fun locating them as you're going through. Yes, those are also worth mentioning with that game.
Yeah, and then, each galaxy has its own boss, of course. But then you have an entire level dedicated to one franchise. I won't give any spoilers, but you get to play as iconic characters and in their world, quote unquote. Yeah. And you'll use like one of their weapons.
Oh, that's cool.
It's hard to explain without spoiling like who's in it, but just play it. I can't recommend it enough. If you have a PS5, it's a perfect change of pace game. I mean, it's awesome. It was my game of the year. But those are games I completed. Currently, I'm playing a few games. I'll just briefly talk about those. 2 RPGs I'm playing. Still pushing through Persona 3 Reload. Mm-hmm. It's a long-ass game. The story is picking up a lot, though. I'm playing on my Ally, so whenever I have some time, either at work or whatever, I'll keep doing that. I started Visions of Mana on Xbox. I'm very early in that game, so I won't really talk too much. One game that is kind of falls in line with it you guys have been playing. It's a first-person detective sort of point-and-click adventure game. It's called Nobody Wants to Die. So it's first-person, and it's in future New York, and the story's excellent. I can't really talk about it without spoiling anything, but basically you're trying to solve a case, and it's in the future, so you're able to rewind crime scenes using these gadgets you have. Based on more evidence you collect, you can start uncovering what happened in real time. Like, you can reverse and go forward the actual crime that took place. And so you utilize all that to find more clues. And it's really good. I'm almost done, I believe. I just came across this huge plot twist, so I'm excited to get back in there. And lastly, this game is called Mini Shoot Adventures. So this is a twin stick shooter, right? But it's an adventure at the same time. So what I mean by that is, if you think of like Metroid, like the old Metroid games, or even Zelda, you have an overworld and it's top down, and you go through as this little ship, and the combat is 100% twin stick. The right stick it shoots, and you move with the left. And but it's an adventure as far as you collect, basically heart pieces. You defeat bosses. Your goal is to get these 4 skulls to sort of open up, I guess the main boss. It's very good. The art style's great, and the soundtrack's awesome. That might be my game of the year. Like, I'm addicted to it right now.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's kind of what I've been.
That seems like a really interesting concept, mashing those 2 genres together.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, Zack-kun, Zaku, what have you been playing? Not that I don't know, but for our viewers, for our audience, for our fellow panel members.
Yeah,
here.
last time we recorded was like early to mid-June. I think the first thing after that was pretty shortly after that, Shadow of the Erd Tree came out, the Elden Ring DLC. So I jumped into that, and I didn't complete it. I'm still at least nominally working my way through it, but it's interesting that it takes you to all the other Souls games that have had DLC. It's kind of like it continues the power progression to some degree from the base game. So you have your leveled up weapons, your soul level, and you continue earning soul and whatever. This one is kind of off in its own pocket dimension as far as gameplay mechanics goes, where they don't want all the time you spent exploring the open world of Elden Ring to completely throw off the balance of the DLC. So instead, there's this alternate progression system where you're supposed to find the key items called Shadow Tree Blessings, and you turn those in for extra power, which sounds fine on its face, but I really don't like it, because it means that, like in Elden Ring, or like most RPGs, you can find items that make you powerful, but you're also just kind of like generally getting stronger, because every time you kill an enemy, you get experience or you get souls or whatever, and you can cash those in for level ups. Which means no matter what you do, you're exploring somewhere, whatever, anywhere on the map, you're doing something to get stronger. And in Shadow of the Erd Tree, because progression is tied to specific hidden collectibles, I would have these experiences where I would just be going forever and not making any appreciable progress because I wasn't finding the path forward, but I also wasn't getting any stronger because I wasn't finding the Shadow Tree Blessings. So I found that frustrating. Eventually, I kind of got demoralized because I wasn't finding paths forward. I kind of felt like I was just stuck in every direction. So at this point, originally I just kind of gave up on it, put it aside, and I returned to it more recently, and I just looked up a walkthrough, like where all the Shadow Tree Blessing went through to collect this, which I feel like is not really in the spirit of how the game was meant to be played, but whatever. I wasn't enjoying it that much otherwise. I still think it's like fundamentally good, but it doesn't change the fact that Elden Ring is not my favorite of the Souls games. It's fine.
I think I remember you really liking Elden Ring, right, when it came out?
I was kind of unsure where I would sit with it. I've not replayed Elden Ring, and when I played through Elden Ring like a couple of years ago, I really felt like I couldn't tell how long it would take until I wanted to replay it, and also what the replay experience would be like, because Elden Ring's very long compared to all the other Souls games, but also because it's like kind of wide open. Like now that I've done everything in the game, if I were to replay it and was like, okay, I want to play like a dexterity build with like katanas that inflict bleed damage or whatever, there's like a set of places I need to go. It's like I need certain upgrade materials, I need the katana, blah blah blah, but there's a ton of places on the map where I don't need to go, right? So I don't know whether like on replay I would just have a much shorter, more curated experience, or if I'd still want to go off the beaten path, or like what. So I didn't really know how it would hold up on replay compared to the other games. But what's happened is that I haven't really had the urge to replay it. And I've been more inclined, I mean, I haven't yet, but to think of like, oh, I want to replay Dark Souls 3, I want to replay Demon Souls, I want to replay Sekiro, and I just haven't felt the urge to replay Elden Ring. I don't know exactly why, but I do think I like the more linear Souls games more.
Did your experience with the Elden Ring DLC change your overall feeling of the game in one way or another?
I don't like the DLC as much as the other DLCs in the series, so in that sense, it didn't do anything to help. I do still think it's fundamentally good. Like, I would still consider it for like an honorable mention if we do like a Game of the Year list again, you know? But it didn't blow me away.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's that. Part of why I put it down in the first place is because not that long after it came out, the Final Fantasy XIV expansion, Dawn Trail, came out, and I really threw myself into that. I go through this with like every Final Fantasy XIV expansion where I get really into it at first, and I'm like, maybe this is the time I'm going to do Savage Raiding. I'm going to get really, geared up and go for it. And then I never do. But I did clear the story, and I cleared the Extreme Trials. I'm looking forward to more content that gets released later on, especially, I think probably next summer, they're going to add Exploration Zone content, which if you've heard me talk about either Bosja or Eureka before, that's what that is. It's themed after kind of like a Bermuda Triangle type zone, this expansion. I'm looking forward to that. I think if you just look at like the gameplay, like the combat design and like the encounter designs, Dawn Trail is as good as the game has been for a long time. I think my main job is still Bard. I think Stormblood era Bard is still better than Dawn Trail Bard, but Dawn Trail Bard is better than Bard has been aside from Stormblood. So that's very good. And I think the boss designs are like at an all-time high. Unfortunately, the story sucks, and that has to do, like, it kind of feels, there's some parts of the story that I think are just objectively not well handled, but there's also this kind of tonal shift that has happened. And there was a bit of this in the most recent expansions, but if you go back to like A Realm Reborn or Heavensward, the story is kind of Game of Thrones-ish in that it's kind of like dark and gray and bad things happen to good people and there's like natural consequences to actions, etc. And now it feels a little more young adultish, if that makes sense. Like it seems like they're chasing after a younger audience, which is not to my taste. And I'm kind of curious to see what happens because it's not been to the taste of a lot of Final Fantasy XIV players. There was kind of like a rolling riot in the forums for like a month after this came out.
Well, I'd actually be interested to know what the average age demographic is of the player base. And does it really make sense to try and cater to what is probably a significantly younger audience than who the player base has been and who the game has been connecting with?
I think it's an interesting question. I don't know the answer to it, but like on the one hand, you're like, well, MMOs in general tend to have older player bases. That older player base will tend to like drop off over time, and you do need to replenish it with younger blood, so you kind of have to meet younger people with what taste they have. On the other hand, I kind of feel like there's a lot of games competing for young people's attention, and even if you add a young adult story to this kind of clunky, old-fashioned MMO, is that going to draw people away from Fortnite or Valorant or whatever? And I don't really think so. So I don't know how much they really stand to gain from doing that, but who knows? I also wouldn't have thought that like D&D would get so popular with the younger generation either, and it did. So who knows? Well, that's Dawn Trail. I had earlier in the year very briefly dipped my toe into Diablo 4, just kind of like played through the prologue and was like, oh, this is pretty good. I got back to Diablo 4, cleared the story on Rogue, and after the story, I kept grinding to get up to level 100. There's a bunch of things in the game, like, Dom has talked about Diablo 4 previously. It's got this like seasons mechanic where like it's like 3 or 4 months, you're supposed to roll a new character and take them through the story and gear them up. And there's like new gimmicks every season. So I was in season 5 when I was going through this, and I did what content would be necessary to give me a leg up if I revisit it in a later season. Like I got all the Lilith's blessings and I got all my Paragon points and et cetera, et cetera. And as a result, I got kind of burned out on Diablo 4 by the time I finished it. But I'd still, especially for the main story, I thought it was pretty good. Like it's not like really deep literature. It's very like horror pulp experience. I don't think it ever gets as strong as the prologue after the prologue, but I was engaged. I thought it had a sense of what Diablo atmosphere should be like that Diablo 3 and even Diablo 2 didn't quite nail. So this is the first time since Diablo 1 where I kind of felt like the vibe was right.
I was surprised hearing you say how much you liked it just because you seemed generally pretty down on Diablo. I'm not going to say like you were a hater or anything or you hated it, just that you didn't really seem very enthused about like modern Diablo. So I was surprised to see that you enjoyed 4.
Yeah.
Did you play like Rogue with poison or ice or?
I was so I know you can play kind of like dagger or bow as like your main way. I was a I used daggers.
Me too.
Twisting blades was my main ability, which is like you hit an enemy with it and then you dash away and then the blades kind of chase after you after a bit. And the farther the blades chase you, the more damage they do to everything between you and the enemy. So it's a really mobile play style where you're just like zipping all over. I used a lot. Poison imbuement was my main imbuement, I think.
Me too. I think it was the best for solo play. Like it helped a lot.
Heavy DPS on single targets. And then the shadow imbuement was good for AoE also. Yeah, but I like it. I would definitely consider going back for a future season. Disabuse myself of any sense of like trying to get like best in slot or beat that. Like if you get to like a level 100, which is the cap, you can fight. It's called like Echo of Lilith, I think, just a super hard version of Lilith, where it's just one of those bosses where you have to play absolutely perfectly for 10 minutes because if you get dinged, you die, you know, which is not something I want to do in the Diablo combat system. So,
yeah, I feel like most times you're bound to get hit in that game.
It feels like, it feels like kind of a sloppy game. Like not necessarily in a bad way for most of the way it's designed because you're fighting hordes, you know? Right. And there's like a certain amount of leeway built into the amount of heals you have and how much damage you can take at once. And you can unlock these abilities that are like, if you take more than, if you drop below 30% HP, then you're invincible for the next 4 seconds. You can get like perks like that to kind of like pave over the rough spots. But that Lilith fight just kind of lays bare how unforgiving it can feel. Yeah. After that, the next two I'll talk about really briefly because I didn't get very far in either of them. I got it in my head to play Final Fantasy V again, Pixel Remaster, in Japanese because I've been doing Duolingo with Japanese for a year. And I was like, I bet I can do this. I definitely need a lot of help looking stuff up as I go. So still hoping that someday I'll be able to play through that without like dictionary or Google Translate kind of help. And then I also got it in my head to try in 1cc Final Fight, which is extraordinarily difficult. The original Final Fight, like more than most beat 'em ups of its era, like those enemies are super aggressive and they do a ton of damage. And it's a really fun game that absolutely holds up. I think better than most beat 'em ups do, like stuff from that era. But yeah, it took me like 9 quarters to get through the game, which is very far away from 1 credit clear. So I also play Black Myth Wukong, still working my way through that. I think I'm significantly farther than either Robert or Angie.
Oh yeah, you are. You are.
I'm close to the end of Act 3 or Chapter 3, whatever it's called. I'm not like absolutely glowing on the game. I do think it's good, and it's at its absolute strongest where like art design and like kind of like the weirdness of the world comes through, and it reminds me in that sense of Witcher 3 or the Witcher games in general. Which have kind of, they're like fantasy games, but it's Polish folklore as retold by a Polish author, as interpreted by a Polish development studio. And so it ends up with like a very distinct feeling compared to Western-made games, even if those Western-made games are dealing with a lot of the same folklore material when you get right down to it. There's like, versions of Snow White or whatever that you can see in the Witcher world, but they feel very different in the Witcher. And so there's something like that in Black Myth Wukong, obviously not folklore, but it's this classic work of Chinese literature about Buddhism, and it's made by a Chinese development team. And so like the kind of like creature designs and vibe of the world feel very distinct, very well done, and very unlike anything I'd played before. I think that's the best thing about the game. Beyond that, it is a Souls-like, more or less. It's got the stamina bar. It's got the dodge rolls. It feels snappier than most Souls-likes. And don't hate me, I do think it's also easier than most Souls-likes.
It's funny you say that because, I've gotten a decent way through. I'm not like super far behind you. But I have wondered if maybe part of the reason why I've gotten farther is because it's not as like brutal as like Dark Souls 3, for example, and Bloodborne, which I've played both of and not gotten very far in. I heard that Chapter 3 is a slog. Like I've heard some pretty negative things about it. And I think you were saying that you also kind of felt like it wasn't great, right?
Chapter 3 has what I would consider, so far at least, the game's poison swamp. Like every Souls game has like this poison swamp area, and every time a Souls game comes out, it's like Miyazaki couldn't help himself, and you're just like wading through this swamp with like slow movement. You're constantly taking damage from it, and it's very annoying, right? Chapter 3 does not include a poison swamp, literally, but it is similarly like, what is going on? This is awkward to navigate. I'm taking damage that I can't avoid, etc. It's actually really reminiscent of something very similar in Dark Souls 3, also not a poison swamp. Irithyll Dungeon, if anyone's familiar with that. I think it's done better in Dark Souls 3. It was just kind of annoying. Now that I know how the whole thing is structured and worked, I think on replay it wouldn't be that bad. But even outside of that, the back half of Chapter 3 is just also... Actually, this goes to something that I think is one of the weaker things about Wukong in general, which is that the level design is not very good. I think regular enemies are not very hard compared to like a genuine Souls game. But the kind of shape and structure of the world, the art of like leading the player's eye or attention to certain areas of the level geography and exploring things, it's just not done as well in Wukong. It's honestly noticeable. And so like the space between the bosses, like especially in the third chapter, I'm really feeling it. It's kind of demotivating. I thought the second chapter was stronger, but like
the second chapter is really good. I think that's the one that I'm on right now. I think it ends with the like.
No, you're still in the first.
Is that the first?
Yeah, you're still in the first. The second chapter is like the desert zone.
Oh, okay. No, I'm not there yet. But I'm stuck on I can't remember what he's called, like the white something. He's got like long hair. He's dressed in all white, has super pale skin, long white hair. He's just really, really kind of kicking my ass.
Yeah.
It's been kind of a bit of a difficulty spike with him.
I think so. The exploration is well rewarded in Black Myth Wukong in that the upgrades you get are actually pretty meaningful. It's just like the actual act of exploration doesn't feel that fun to me. I do still think it's good. It's not. I definitely prefer Lords of the Fallen and probably Darksiders 3.
It's not this year's Wolong.
It's not this year's Wolong. No. I will probably get the names confused at some point, but yeah. I also did a replay that I just finished this morning of Icewind Dale, the Switch port of that, back on my CRPG bullshit, as happens every now and then, right? This one is more of a just kind of straight dungeon crawl. Like, there's story, it's atmospheric, but like the reason you play Icewind Dale is because you want to roll a bunch of Dungeons and Dragons characters and go through a bunch of fights, basically. And I think for second edition Dungeons and Dragons, it does a really good job of that. It's probably still my favorite CRPG in total, which is an unorthodox position, but this is my third playthrough. I played it on hard mode for the first time. Had a great time. I don't recommend the Switch port to anyone because it is very crash prone, but having bought it, I stuck with it. Haven't really played much of yet, Shadow of the Ninja Reborn, the new Tenko Project game, the ones that did like Ninja Warriors once again, and the Pocky and Rocky game. And it seemed promising, like a really old school arcade action kind of game, but with a more modern move set. It's interesting. It wasn't what I was in the mood for. I wanted to buy it to support them, but whatever. I'll get back to it. And the last thing on my list that I played is UFO 50, which came out just this past week. Mm-hmm. And so that's kind of like a super group of indie devs. It's like Derek Yu, the guy who made Spelunky, and the other names I'm not going to be able to remember. But one of them worked with Derek on Eternal Daughter back in the day. One of them is the Downwell developer. One of them was at Vlambeer, etc. But the whole project is basically imagining an 8-bit console existed that never did, called the UFO, and that there was like one company that called UFO Soft that made a bunch of games for it over the years that this console was around, from like 1982 to 1990. And this game is a collection of 50 brand new 80s style console games that were designed as though they came out between the years 1982 and 1990 for this fictional console. So each one has like a different one of these guys as like the lead developer, and others are like supporting and contributing ideas. And so in the end, it's a pack of like 50 kind of smaller scope games together. I've tried them all out at this point. I paced myself of like trying like 10 games a night at first. And some of them are like really arcade style games. Some of them are RPGs or puzzle games or etc. None of them quite feel like straight rips of existing things. Like there's none of them where you're like, oh, that's the Mario, that's the Mega Man, right? But well, there's one that's kind of the Parodius, I think. But they all they feel like 80s games, but they also feel new. Like there's one that's kind of a stage-based survival score attack game called Campanella that uses Solar Jetman style mechanics where you're like holding down the A button to try and hover a little bit, which is tricky, and it means it controls differently than other games of that type. There's a handful of games, there's like about 5 games at this point that I'm like actively working on trying to get better at, but I think even just those 5 games were worth the price of admission, and there's like a lot of depth here. So far, I don't know whether UFO 50 or Devil Blade Reboot, which is a shmup that came out earlier in the year I talked about last time I recorded. I don't know which of those is in the lead for like my game of the year, but it's definitely one of those. I think UFO 50 is really strong. Both of those are unfortunately PC only, so any of you that are strictly console kiddies, you just got to hope that I get support someday. But that's it for me. So.
I forgot. I purchased Balatro for the third time.
Oh yeah,
on my iPhone. So I'm playing that too.
All right. Well, I think that is good opportunity to move into our topic of the day, which is the slow and steady implosion of AAA gaming, or in Ubisoft's case, quadruple A gaming. So I guess we'll try and go in order of things that have happened, though some things have been kind of happening concurrently. Like, for example, Concord and Ubisoft and their troubles. So as you guys know, Concord, 8 years in development, $400 million to make, and it was out for, was it like a couple weeks or something? Max?
Less than 2 weeks.
Yeah, before Sony pulled the plug on it. So that, I guess, is probably a good place to start.
Maybe talk about what it was supposed to be.
So,
Yeah.
that was supposed to be Sony's Overwatch. But then Colin Moriarty's podcast revealed it was supposed to be Sony's Star Wars. Far from it. I think that the first red flag was when they did the open beta in, I think it was July. It was either July or August. We, of course, don't know what the PlayStation numbers were, but the Steam numbers came out, and they were low. They were pretty damningly low. And that was not a good look.
Has anyone been, like, people have been playing it, and I realize neither of you did it, right? But has anyone who has played it has, like had serious complaints about the gameplay, or is it just that it hasn't?
See, that's the thing. So, all right, so a couple things. I have thoughts on Concord. When the game came out, when it, like, actually launched, some of the rumblings online were people, and this is when it, got canceled after less than 2 weeks. Some people were saying, oh, Sony put it out there to fail. Sony didn't care about this game. It's 8 years of development that we know of, so that's almost a decade. And the initial estimates were 100 to 200 million. And then the Moriarty podcast comes out, and they're like, no, it's 400 million. And the idea that it was going to be their Star Wars. Clearly, Sony had ambitions for this game. 8 years ago, I believe Overwatch would have been probably at its height or close to it. I would bet money that executives sitting and brainstorming about Concord were saying, this is going to be our Overwatch killer. Because that's how the industry operates. When Call of Duty was at its peak, it was, this is going to be a Call of Duty killer. And then Brink comes out and everyone laughs. Mm-hmm. But like that, you just constantly have that going on. That's the mindset. So this was supposed to be their Overwatch. And they had all these visions of, it's going to have, spin-offs, and there's going to be comics and books and movies and animation and on and on and on. And by all accounts, the gameplay is fine. As far as I know, I did not play it, but virtually everyone who had played it and was positive towards it said it played well. So it just comes right crashing back down to the very poor character design and just the look of the characters. It's interesting because, like, human beings have instinctual, visceral reactions to things, right? Just the look of the cast, I can't exactly put a finger on what it was, but, like, I would look at that cast and just think, there's something wrong with these designs. Like, that was my mind every time I looked at the characters. Just, there's something off. And there are people who allege that the devs knew this, that they had been told during development, playtesters aren't digging the look of the characters. And they plowed ahead anyway. And the question has kind of become, so is that upper management dictating the look? Is that the lower level employees? Was it a perfect storm of both kind of wanting the same thing, thinking this is going to appeal to who knows what audience, the mythical modern audience, I guess. But ultimately, it failed. And I think there's just no question that whatever they were going for didn't click with anybody. Because the numbers were so low that after less than 2 weeks, Sony said, we're pulling the plug on this. Like, that's not normal. That's really unprecedented.
They're saying things like how people were basically kind of tired of the hero shooter, that the game kind of missed its moment, that it was entering a crowded market. I think all that, there's definitely merit to that. They're saying, too, that it looked generic, and it's true. I remember when the trailer launched, immediately on YouTube, the comments were just filled with people saying this just looks like boring corporate slop. None of this actually seems really interesting or inspired. And yeah, I've also heard the rumors that during beta testing, the testers were coming back with negative feedback about the character designs. I've play-tested 3 or 4 games now for Sony. I've had some complaints, like people that were, like Spider-Man 2. Like, Mary Jane and Peter in particular were really ugly, and I don't know why they were so ugly. Harry looked a little weird too, and I mentioned it, but it wasn't so... It wasn't so intense that I think other people in the room would have been giving that feedback or really would have been focusing on it very much. So for beta testers to be so concerned about it that they're bringing it to their attention, I think it can't be ignored, but they chose to ignore it. And I had also heard that they chose to ignore it because they were basically just like, these are just angry gamers. It's just angry gamers being haters, which is something that we'll actually have to discuss when it comes to Ubisoft as well. But this just arrogance from these developers that we know what's best. It doesn't matter what the feedback is from the beta testers. Just forge ahead with our plans. And we keep seeing over and over again these massive games with long development times, hundreds of millions of dollars sunk into them, and they're DOA, just dead in the water. It's concerning for what this means for the future of the industry.
Robert, you mentioned hero shooter fatigue as a...
No, Angie did.
You mentioned hero shooter fatigue as a reason people might be, not taking to it.
Yeah.
Didn't Deadlock just get announced and everyone's really excited for it?
Yeah.
It's frustrating because I think that the reasons Angie brought up, there is some validity to them, surely, because Overwatch isn't as popular as it used to be, for example. But just the fact that these were such poorly designed characters in a game where that is the whole point. Like the hero shooter, the whole point is you latch onto these characters, you like how they look, you enjoy the lore building that goes on around them, and you get these gremlins that they gave you, and you're expected to latch onto them. And I think that, you could go into the reasoning why all day, the motivation behind it, but ultimately what I took from it was this was a very intentional assemblage of characters in terms of their looks. They did not give you a conventionally cool or sexy or whatever type of character on purpose, because I think they knew we throw one badass ninja warrior in there and the servers are just going to be filled with the badass ninja warrior and no one's going to choose any of the other characters. They wanted you to be selecting from that cast. And that is like the kind of main mistake. And like ultimately, and again, we'll get to this also with like Ubisoft, for example, but like it's art. You're making a project, you have convictions, you have desires, beliefs that you want to put into it. You're making product. You are expecting people to pay you money for item you are selling, okay? In this case, it's a game. And so if you are totally putting what your vision is ahead of what people are going to actually want and be drawn to, you're destined for failure. unless you just happen to get lucky. Because there's a chance that this could have came out and my feeling was going to be the minority, which was these are weird looking. Mm-hmm. Instead, it's all these people going, oh yeah, this is great. But no, that's not what happened. And if there are warning signs there, you kind of have to take them. I mean, I ain't defending any corporation, but there's like what's the word? Fiduciary responsibilities, right? I'm so educated. You have those responsibilities, and you're getting all these red flags, and you're just like, no, that's okay, don't care. Mm-hmm. It's like, this is not wise, you know.
Yeah.
Can I offer a hot take?
Sure.
I actually think that the Concord character designs are pretty cool.
Hot take
for NPCs.
That's
like
right there.
Like if you're playing like Outer Worlds and you enter a space station and these are the characters that are there, I'd be like, wow, what a quirky cast of characters. I want to talk to this NPC over here. I wonder what they're going to sell me. They just don't have the hero vibe. I don't really have a problem with the look of the characters so much as like I don't want to be any of them. I don't want to identify with any of them.
That's a big
right?
problem.
That's not a bad way of putting it. Is that, I mean, they're unique for sure. Like you're going to look at them and be like, oh, I remember that one in the red coat, all right. But that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to want to play as them, especially for hours. Like when we're talking about something that's competitive multiplayer, you're talking about hours of sitting and playing. And it's like, yeah, I'm not digging the blue trench coat and the pink dishwashing gloves character. Like, that's not my jam.
You guys are much nicer than me. I don't even want to look at them.
Yeah, I mean, they're pretty bad.
Them.
Well, see, I feel
Get out of my sight.
I feel like Concord's characters are the end result of learning all the wrong lessons from manga and anime. Because if you look at JoJo's Bizarre Adventure and the characters in that, you're just like, who the hell would want to read this?
Yeah.
And there's millions of like Americans sitting around reading it and they love it. So if you're Sony, you know, and you're these executives who they don't even play these games, they're out golfing, they show up for a meeting. What do the kids want? And it's like, well, we have this game, Concord. Well, those are kind of weird looking characters. Yeah, but look, here's, you know, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. Here's some One Piece characters and on and on. It's like, oh, those are weird looking too. Yeah, that'll probably work. It's like, no. It's like, I mean, that itself is its own just kind of discussion because it's like, I think the appeal is the fact that they're Japanese, is the fact that it's manga. As soon as you try to do your own thing, you're like a Western studio, you're just not doing it right. It doesn't have the same flavor. I'm done. No thank you.
Yeah. Well, as a result, Concord is no more. Some people that are trying to capitalize on this on like eBay, selling sealed copies of the game. I even saw somebody grade it, like get the copy graded.
CGC graded.
Yeah, I was like, why? And wselling it, whatever.
$10,000, I think I saw one.
I definitely saw some in the high hundreds. I think I saw one for $1,000. It's ridiculous, but yeah. So that's Concord's legacy. Just one big fat joke.
And then did somebody mention the rumored budget?
Oh, yeah, $400 million.
$400 million. That's the latest coming from Colin Moriarty's podcast.
It's upsetting to me, too, because these, it's not even just games. These, failed TV shows. It just came out that I think The Acolyte was actually $280 million, $230 million for a show that hardly anyone watched and was pretty widely, universally panned. But thinking about what you can do with this money, maybe
it's the ultimate money laundering scheme.
That's what they think. They keep saying that about The Acolyte. But, not to get too much on a soapbox here, but, we have, I'm part of a historical society here in our city, and we have a house that's on the National Register of Historic Places, and it's facing a very unsure future because it's going to cost something like $6 million to restore and preserve.
Yeah, and Sony just sneezed that out of its ass.
Yeah, and I'm like, well, if you guys want to maybe just write a check, send it our way for this house. $230 million for a TV show that did fuck all and nobody watched it and it was just one big turd. But the way that these companies pump hundreds of millions into these shows, games, movies, whatever, that just flop one after the other, and it's like, this is money wasted that you could be putting towards better things.
Yeah, I mean, we said it on this podcast, but I heard PlayStation-centric podcasts basically saying, don't hold your breath. These characters suck.
Yeah. Somebody
was like, yeah, I like one of them. He's like, I like none of them.
Yeah, that's me.
Yeah, there are people that, people listen to, that have a big audience, you know, that are like, for PlayStation's sake, I really hope it does well, but like, no, we're not hopeful here.
No.
There's no way. And then you find out the budget. I mean, that is, yeah.
They have another one on the way too, right? And it looks the same in terms of weird characters. I think they have another one in the pipeline.
Oh, man.
And that one's probably not going to do very well either.
No. Well, you know, Ubisoft has also been dealing with this. You know, they've gotten a lot of flack for a lot of their games that have come out recently. Starting with Skull and Bones and the failure of that game. 11 years in development, 6 delays, multiple like scrapping, re-scrapping again, starting over, $200 million for that. Another failure. It's basically been described as a worse Assassin's Creed Black Flag because that's kind of where it started. That was its inspiration. I was actually reading a review last night about it, and the reviewer was saying that it was slow and plotting combat. It was a live service nightmare, menial busy work like resource gathering. There are games too that think that they take the aspect of realism a little too far. Like he was talking about the effect of wind on the boat travel, and how you know, sailing with the wind is going to increase the knots that you're going. Sailing against the wind is going to reduce your sailing speed by a few knots. That's fine, but also like it can feel a little too intense. He was basically saying it felt too real to the point where it was just a slog. I actually experienced this when I was playing Chinatown Detective Agency, and it was like you have to remember to pay the rent on your office. Like I don't want to pay. I don't want to worry about that.
Why can't I set up auto pay?
Yeah.
Yeah, how come there's no auto pay?
Yeah.
But also, like, man, hearing you talk about these effect on like knots, right? If I'm playing a pirate game, I don't want to have to know what a knot is. Right?
It's like that meme, you know, what the F is a kilometer?
Yeah. Yeah.
What the F is a knot?
Yeah. So just this game again. Years and years of development hell, hundreds of millions poured into it, and it comes out and everyone's like, this is extremely middling to just bad. And Ubisoft is a really, really bad example, one of the worst offenders of not taking feedback into account and just kind of, you know, pushing forward, moving forward and plowing ahead and not really caring about the feedback. Assassin's Creed Shadows has been mired in controversy. Just a few days ago, you know, they last minute pulled out of Tokyo Game Show, TGS, and now they've announced that the game is delayed until February. And you know, the CEO, he put out an interesting letter. He was saying that, in a nutshell, the game has some developmental issues that they need to work out, bugs. And it's kind of, it was interesting to me too, because he was saying how the failure of Star Wars Outlaws, which also just came out, how that game is a buggy mess. And he was like, you know, we've learned from that, and now we need to do better, essentially. But then I'm like, you guys have been doing this for years. You're notorious for releasing buggy games, and now you're pretending like it's Star Wars Outlaws that really made us change our outlook. Like, it shouldn't have taken
Crazy
that
we
long.
thought EA Star Wars was
Yeah.
And that's such a bogus claim to make too, because it's like, oh, so we've been making video games for half a century, and you just figured out that people don't like buggy crap that you charge full price for coming out the door.
Yeah.
It's like, just get out of here. I mean, if you look at Outlaws, for example, you know, you look at the main character and just you get universal feedback. She looks a little weird. And like, that doesn't mean she's not hot enough. You know, it's like, how come she's not half naked? Like, nobody's saying that. It's like, I'm looking at the character model and she just looks a little weird. It's like, what's up with the proportions of her face and her jaw and all these different things?
Chin.
And no change, just full steam ahead, because everybody who's complaining is just, you know, a hater.
I wanted to play. I saw like a few minutes of the AI in that game.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh my
It's
god,
crazy.
like the takedown and the stealth.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's like,
It's unreal.
now the thing is, this is the sort of part of the argument where it could go either way, because one of the complaints is it makes no sense that this, you know, 120-pound woman is one-arming a stormtrooper in armor by the head down to the ground, knocking him out like it's nothing. There's plenty of games where you kind of get away with ridiculous stuff like that. But I think it's obvious you did something wrong that it's this polarizing before it even hits stands. Then it hits stands, and all of the negatives combined with the reality of the bugginess and so on resulted in people rejecting it. And, the other thing, too, is some of the arguments people make. I looked at this and thought, well, a lot of people were of the opinion, how come this isn't a Han Solo game? It's like, so you made a Han Solo game without Han Solo. And I'm like, well, that doesn't totally matter, because like Star Wars Jedi Survivor is like a Luke Skywalker game without Luke Skywalker. You have a different Jedi character that you're playing as, and it's still enjoyable. You can make it work. But the difference is the main character in Star Wars Jedi Survivor is a cool looking character. It's like, okay, I can get behind playing as this guy.
He's not that cool.
Well, I mean, he ain't like
Angie,
the greatest.
back me up here.
Let me put it this
Cal
way.
Kestis, cool or not?
He's decent.
No.
At least I'm not looking at him thinking, what's wrong with his head?
Yeah, agreed.
They got that part of it down. And then the gameplay took it across the finish line. This one, you have buggy gameplay, strange setup, strange character, and then what do you have? Another failure.
Oh, I also watched a video. I wish I could remember his channel name on YouTube so I could give him credit. But he had supposedly, it's anonymous, so you got to take it with a grain of salt. But he supposedly spoke with a bunch of Ubisoft developers on the condition of anonymity, so they don't lose their jobs, about various things happening within Ubisoft. And one of the things he mentioned about the development of Star Wars Outlaws is supposedly they were told that Kay, the protagonist, she couldn't punch down, as in be mean to the little guy when they say punch down. It's odd, though, because I think Robert said she's described as a scoundrel. She is, operating in this gray area. She's exploring the outer rims of the galaxy where, just like the wild west, the outer rim of the United States, a lot of losers, a lot of weirdos, degenerates, criminals, etc. will gather on the edges. So what does that mean in the context of this game? She doesn't punch down. She's not a hero. She's probably not also a villain, I imagine. She's just somewhere operating in the middle, but she can't even conduct herself in a realistic manner because the people within Ubisoft don't know what they're doing and are more concerned with certain narratives, pushing certain ideas.
So this one, I don't know if it's that crazy. It's basically saying, Robin Hood doesn't punch down, right? He robs from the rich to give to the poor. He's an outlaw. I'm sure the sheriff would call him a scoundrel, but he doesn't take from anyone who has less than him, right? So he's kind of like this benevolent rogue, and I kind of feel like that's probably what they were going for.
Maybe.
Well, I mean, if anything, you could look at it like they didn't want this to be Grand Theft Auto and Star Wars. So, it's an open world, and if Kay can just run around blowing up any ship that she sees and whatever, they're trying to avoid that, probably also by Disney's mandate, because it's their IP. But if that is the phrasing, though, the mindset of her punching down, that's where it really just doesn't make sense. I could see not wanting to make this person just an outright villain, because you can go around killing people for no reason, but the idea that you're really, you get what I'm saying? It's just...
Yeah, well, I mean, then he went on to talk about, generally speaking, the developmental issues within Ubisoft and how supposedly they are promoting people who have less experience, who are younger, as opposed to the guys who've been there longer. They're a little older and they have more experience. He chalked this up to probably wanting cheaper labor, which I absolutely think is a thing because that's what's going on within tech as a whole right now. But I also think it's wanting certain people of perhaps a certain mindset working on these games. The problem is, he was saying that the developers he's speaking with, they were saying, you have people that are working on first-person shooters who've never played first-person shooters. They have never worked on an FPS game before, and they're being put on these projects, and they're completely out of their depth. And so we end up getting crap games that hundreds of millions and years have been poured into, and it's just what's going in. It's like you put in crap, you get out crap, you get crap out in return, And that's what's going on now. It's like you have mediocre development teams, the wrong focus. Everything about it was just like wrong from the start. And then they're asking us over and over again, don't you want to play it? Don't you want to pay $70 for this? No. The answer is no.
And that's a minimum, too.
Yes. And I mean, it's like, look at Skull and Bones. They had the audacity to call that a quadruple A game. And they're dead serious about it. Like, quadruple A. This is what passes for quadruple A to you guys? Like, and this is what you want us to pay money for. They were talking about how the PvP in the game just felt really tacked on. All these other issues, and they're like, yeah, this is like the pinnacle of game development. I mean, it's a joke.
Well, it sucks too because it's like there's potential in all of these projects, and you just wonder, is it because there isn't enough positive criticism? Mm-hmm. You know, it's like you need to have that in any kind of creative endeavor in order to get better. With the game design classes I've taught, I've told students, it's like, so I do a lesson where I'll have them take a piece of origami paper and make a crane. And so they'll sit and they'll watch a video and they'll build the crane. And then at the end of it, I'll tell them, okay, now I want you to take it and I want you to crumple it up and throw it in the garbage can. And I'll walk around the room with a trash can just to like enforce in their head, don't become too precious about these things that you're making, especially in an entertainment industry sort of setting where it's like, look, you're not at home with a canvas that you're working on for like a couple months and then it's your baby and you love it. Are you going to be attached to what you're working on, working for EA or Ubisoft? Sure. But the point is that you need to be able to readily accept it sucks. Like someone's going to look at it and say, it's not up to snuff, it's not good enough, or whatever, and you just move on. And instead, I think we're seeing the end result of kind of endlessly validating where there needed to be criticism instead. And that's not good either. It's not good because, for one thing, the consumer gets screwed over. You know, you're expected to pay full price, and then DLC and all these other things, right? Mm-hmm. But then it's also not good for the developers. Because it's like, well, I get it. You know, you felt passionately about this project. You put a lot of heart and soul and hours into it. But if you give us something that sucks and nobody wants to play it, take whatever commentary you want from Twitter and Reddit away and just look at your pure sales numbers. You didn't sell enough, and nobody wants it. Well, guess who's going to lose their job now? It's not me. I just didn't buy your game.
Yeah, I have an idea.
Yeah.
Real quick. Just charge like $30 more so they can play it a few days early.
Oh, man.
Yeah, that'll work.
Now, in case anyone doesn't know,
write that down.
Yeah.
What Dom's referencing there, when Outlaws came out, the $120, $130 super duper deluxe version gave you early access, and it was 3 days, I believe.
Yep.
So all these people were playing for 3 days. It's buggy as hell. Ubisoft puts out a patch and then tells them, by the way, the patch is going to conflict with your save data from before. You have to restart. Just nullifying your early access. Yeah. But you still have the memories, is what I'm sure Ubisoft's lawyers would tell you.
That kind of like pay extra to play a few days early, that's not unique to Ubisoft.
No.
But it does, I think this goes to, what the hell is his name? Yves Guillemot or something? Guillemot?
Yeah.
Whatever.
Guillemot.
Whatever. Like it goes to what his letter, where they say they're actually going to stop this practice, right? They're not going to do like these early access pre-orders, but the thrust of his letter is mostly about game quality, right? And ostensibly that's why AC Shadows is getting delayed, to try and polish it up, because Lord knows Ubisoft has been in this position before, famously with Assassin's Creed Unity, which at its core is a really great game that launched in a really unacceptable state.
I'll never forget the screenshot. I don't remember what.
Nobody will forget that screenshot.
Yeah, the article that ran. I don't remember who ran it originally. Of the two people dancing, and
just
one
eyes and mouth.
Yeah, and one person's like dipping the woman, and he's got like the crazy eyes, the teeth. You might be able to see the brain, and it looks like it looks like a joke. It also kind of looks like a horror game. I remember I was at work, saw it, and I just started laughing out loud. It was just so comical. But yeah, I mean, this is why I said, Ubisoft, and that's just one example of Ubisoft's storied history of releasing buggy crap games and having these issues at launch. And to Robert's point, he said how people end up losing their jobs because of this. We've already been seeing this all year. The layoffs after layoffs after layoffs, studio closures, restructuring, quote unquote. And just yesterday, I think it was, Blizzard Activision laid off another 400 people.
Yes.
And it affected mostly the Overwatch and Diablo 4 teams. So it's just...
Well, and what's so frustrating about this is that it just feels like all of these studios are dropping the ball on the basics.
Yes.
Because if you look at Microsoft and that debacle that they've created for themselves, they go and buy every studio under the sun. And we're talking big-time studios to the tune of billions of dollars. And you ain't putting out shit in terms of content that's making Xbox the place to go.
Yep.
There's not a bunch of exclusives that make your system the go-to. Instead, you're obsessed with this idea of the boxless future. You have an Omni device that can play everything, and all you need is a controller and Game Pass. It's like, okay, that's cool. You got to get there, and you're not there. And you're at a point where you can't sustain the studios that you bought. You're laying people off. Now, that was always going to happen. You're consolidating. There are legitimately redundancies here and there. But this is not that. This is mismanagement and not producing enough quality content. And it's like, and that should be your number one goal. Instead, it's like, well, we're futurists. We see what the future is. It's like, okay, again, you're not there. So you have to make exclusives. You have to make Xbox itself a thing people want to own and want to play. It's like, because otherwise you just become irrelevant. Who cares if you have this great Xbox service when no one's buying your system? I think it's being outsold by PlayStation. It's like 3-1 or something. It's some incredibly huge margin.
Well, also, they're not really much of futurists or forward thinkers or forward lookers when what they keep pumping out, what they think is going to be the future of gaming, is what nobody wants, and it keeps getting rejected. And this practice of continuing to ignore gamer feedback, it's not gamers shorthand here, but what it is your customer base, ignoring the feedback of your actual paying customers, people who want to give you their money because you're arrogant, because you believe that you know better, because you want to chalk it up to just quote-unquote angry gamers and haters, and throw a bunch of really insulting labels onto us and say, we're terrible people because we think this game doesn't look very good. And we have legitimate reasons for believing that it doesn't look very good. And sure, you might get a comparative handful of genuinely abusive people online who take it too far, whatever. But that's not at all the vast majority of the player base for these games, for the target audience. They're just regular people who just want to play a game, enjoy it, not have certain things put onto them, be made to feel like you're a terrible person because you simply don't like certain content or whatever. That's not going to get these studios the results that they want. People are going to continue to vote with their wallets and say, I'm not interested. Again, sorry.
And I think too that you can't ignore that there's some complicity here with how this stuff is getting reported, and how for a lot of people in the mainstream, it's about not even identifying there's a problem in the first place.
Yeah. Because
if you identify that there's a problem, you are giving, in their heads, it's the smallest amount of credence to, well, there's people who don't like what they're seeing or getting. And if you do that, then you're validating that they exist and that they're a thing. So you have to pretend that's not the case. And the problem is, I think the industry itself is already insular. It's a lot of people who think and feel one way, they get hired, and then they're in the studio and they hire more, and then even from the top down, it's the same way. And then, the games media, everybody's feeling the same way as you too. So you're in this bubble, and I think probably the average Concord dev was shocked that it failed as hard as it did, when everyone from the outside looking in is like, well, bro, I saw your character designs, I don't know what you were expecting. It's like, but if you got the media jerking you off and saying how great everything is, and then internally no one gives positive reinforcement, it's just nothing but everything's good.
Toxic positivity.
In the end, the only thing that matters is the consumer behavior, right? Because that's going to determine what's successful, is what convinces somebody to take money out of their wallet and hand it to PlayStation or whoever else.
Well, that's going to be a question for the PS5 Pro, right? I mean, they announce it. They announced the $700 price tag plus an extra $180 for the disc drive that it does not come with.
It's an extra $80.
Oh, 80 for the disc drive that it doesn't come with, because to Robert's earlier point, they're futurists, because the future is digital, all digital, because that's what they want.
Well, that's what they want, right?
Yeah.
That's the key there is it's an all digital future because they want it to be. Because why? It'll save them 20 cents a unit. Well, that just give you digital instead of physical.
They're future-proofing their console in the sense that if they can't make all digital a thing, they still have the disc drive available. So they can still keep making physical discs and making people pay extra for it. So it's kind of a win-win for them either way. But the consumer, that's a different story. The reception to it hasn't been very good. Now, granted, the 12,300 30th anniversary PS5 Pros that they put up for pre-order, those all sold out. So, that's 12,300 sales they can bank on. But
how organic are they, too?
Yeah.
Because, it's a 30th anniversary. It's very limited.
Yeah.
That's obviously 80% scalpers.
Yep.
And if not 80%, it's a high number of scalpers, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So would it have sold out if you didn't have that external interference? Who knows?
Yeah. But, that's another example of pushing stuff onto people and just being like, buy it. You should buy it because it came from us and you want the next console, right? And it's like, well, if you're not really giving me much to go off of here, and I don't really have faith that the next generation of games is going to be great, I am questioning whether or not I want to pay $780 for this.
Is it correct that Microsoft is not making a Pro equivalent this generation?
They're not.
Probably not. I think they had plans for it, but the way they're going right now, I think they were just like, never mind.
I think somebody tweeted, somebody random, I don't know if they're a PlayStation or Xbox fan, but they said Xbox 5 and Xbox handheld is going to be their last try.
I mean, that makes sense. I mean, for one thing, ripping off the Switch model would probably be wise. And then I think from the outset that Xbox had major issues with branding and all that. But going back to the PS5 Pro, I thought it was so annoying because, again, the media, you have these shills running cover saying, well, comparatively, if you look at it's actually comparable to... It's like everyone's broke. $700 is $700. I don't care what it compared to in 1994 or in 2001. It's, I want $700 for this thing, and you can barely afford ramen.
Yep.
It's like, that's a problem.
I think what's really important is that we all, I think as gamers, want Xbox to succeed, because I think if consoles continue on, right, as consumers, we need competition. We need we need some sort of competition, because if there's no competition,
drives creativity.
Yeah, creativity, and I don't know.
Yeah.
Plus, I mean, if you look at what's happening with PS5 Pro right now, we're at a point where I think they're still saying that if it's not half, it's this huge chunk of PS4 owner has not upgraded to PS5. And you look at how long it took for us to get to the point where we were getting true PS5 exclusive games like Final Fantasy 16, and you can see the difference. When 16 comes out, you're like, oh wow, that looks really good, versus all these earlier games that had to be able to scale on both platforms. So we're still trying to get everyone on board the PS5 Xbox Series era of gaming, and you're going to give another incremental increase on top of that? It's like, so how is that supposed to work? It's like, so you're still trying to get everyone on the PS5 bandwagon, and you're the best selling between yourselves and Xbox at the moment, but you're still struggling to reach what you need to. And then you're going to add another system in that's more powerful. And it's like, and how many games are really going to truly be able to take advantage of that? And they're saying, oh, you'll have increased performance for this game and this game and this game. It's like, well, that's cool, but like, I saw a journalist who was saying they think that, how did they phrase it? Basically like, oh, Sony's just targeting like a niche audience with this one. It's like, really? It's like, so you spent millions of dollars to develop it and sell it with the hope that you'd get a few people, that small little crowd.
This is how both, like, to be fair to Sony, this is how both phones and PCs work, where you get incremental upgrades every year, There's no particular reason for somebody who has an iPhone 14 to get an iPhone 15, but there are enthusiasts who are into it, and they become hand-me-down devices. Like eventually you're going to get a new iPhone at some point. You can decide when you want to. Same with PC components, right? Maybe you got a 3090 graphics card right now. You're like, I don't really need a 4090 yet. Eventually you upgrade to a 4090 or you skip up to a 5090, right? I have the original Steam Deck. The OLED that came out last year is more powerful. I was like, I don't really need that. Maybe in the next Steam Deck, maybe I will, right? And all these are like incremental upgrades. Something I play on the OLED Steam Deck would look a little better than what plays on the LCD Steam Deck. Consoles have not worked like that traditionally. Consoles have generally had like more dramatic shifts from one to the next, tied with kind of like a loss leader strategy for getting that into people's hands. The PS Pro is just doing the iPhone thing, right?
But the thing is, Apple can afford to do it, right? Because essentially, you do those incremental increases, you're supplemented by the fact that, for one, a phone is more of a necessity than a gaming console. It often is subsidized by carriers saying, hey, well, it's a $1,200 phone, but you give us $20 a month for 2 years, and you don't have to pay it all at once. And you have all those little things there that allow them to kind of do that, and they can get away with it more easily.
Yeah, nothing's stopping Walmart from saying pay us $20 a month, you can have a
But
PS5
nobody's doing
Pro.
that, though.
But what's stopping them from doing that? Nothing, right? Like,
but they're not.
Sure, but like moving into having like, look, part of this is like what's it called? Price discrimination, right? Which is something that happens in most industries. Like for airlines, for example, you can buy first-class tickets instead, right? This is Sony selling first-class tickets. This is Sony selling balcony seats. This is Sony saying, we're no longer Coke. We're not selling the same thing to the plebs as to the rich people. We want to be able to sell to the rich people and extract more money from them.
Yeah.
Well, ultimately, we're going to have to see in 3 months when we come back for the next podcast how the sales went for the Pro. I think the 30th is sold out, but I think the standard version of the Pro, I believe you can still pre-order it. Now, that doesn't mean it's not selling well, but it just means that it's available. So when launch comes, we'll see how many people adopt it. But
it's not going to sell as well as the PS5. I think that's a given, but that's not the standard, right? Because there are people for whom these aren't indirect competition, people who already have a PS5 who buy a PS5 Pro, or who, like me, I didn't get an Xbox One. I got an Xbox One X because I was like, all right, well, this is enough reason for me to get an Xbox when I was holding out. If I can get a slightly nicer one with a little extra bells and whistles, right? I think the question is just going to be whether it's profitable for Sony, not whether it's a blockbuster success on the level of the PS5 or whatever. And I think you are going to have to look out. However the PS5 Pro goes, I think we are all going to see more price discrimination in the industry. That's the microtransactions are that, right? Battle passes are that. A way to, like, if you have more money, we'd be glad to take it from you. The PS5 Pro is a battle pass for PlayStation hardware. That's how I see it.
Well, speaking of digital only and digital media, as we've probably mentioned multiple times here before, we're all Californians here. We're in California. And just yesterday, some articles were coming out about how there's new law here in California, which usually would have me rolling my eyes, but do actually think this is an interesting one that's probably good overall. Governor Gavin Newsom, he signed AB 2426. It bans digital storefronts from using words like buy or purchase unless customers are informed that they do not own the media. This is in an effort for customers to better understand what it is that they're buying or purchasing, rather. The idea is to help customers understand you're actually just purchasing a license to this media. You are not buying it because it can be revoked. It can be taken away from your digital library and you no longer have access to it. So the assembly member, Jackie Irwin, who actually wrote the legislation, she said herself, it's aimed at ensuring customers have a full understanding of what they are buying. I don't think that this is going to have a huge impact on gaming. I think that gamers in particular tend to be pretty tech literate people already. We understand, painfully so, if you no longer have access to a game or whatever, we get that. But as we see the industry moving towards, digital only or digital first. Gamers have been very vocal about this issue and saying, I don't like it. I don't like it because I prefer to have tangible media. I don't like a corporation having the thing that I bought, having total control over the thing that I purchased, and I don't even really own it. You've seen this wording multiple times online, like I'm sure we all have. I don't really own it, is what gamers have been saying. And so I think this is actually a good law for once that actually is in the consumer's favor, because you have people who either don't understand, or even if you do perfectly understand, it's almost like an FU to these companies. Like, yeah, we get it. We understand what you're doing. No, I don't own it. I am just buying a license, but you cannot use this language anymore to basically it's almost to try and make people feel better about what they're doing. Oh yeah, you're buying this game digitally.
No, it's gaslighting is what it is.
Yeah.
Because the consumer's been trained to see all of these things as just a net benefit.
Yeah.
Oh, it's digital. No space taken up in your house.
Yes.
You can have it instantly. And that's what the subscription services are all about too. You have 1,000 games at your fingertips and on and on. Now, the semantics of it, you actually do have a big library. You can play it, blah, blah, blah. That's all good, but the point is that it's written and structured and set up in a way to get you on board without you thinking too much about it. Because if you were to phrase something like, I don't know, Game Pass as, it's a game rental service, people know what the term rental means.
Right.
And if you say rental, that puts in the consumer's head different things, like, oh, I'm renting games? Whereas if you just put it as, you get access, or you this or that, and then going to the outright purchases, it's like, oh, well, I'm going to go buy Echoes of Wisdom from the eShop instead of getting the cartridge. It's like, well, there actually is a difference. And the consumer right now, I think there are plenty who get it, but there's also plenty who don't. That you're buying the access through a license, and that license can be revoked.
Yeah.
You saw this with, was it Vudu, I think? It was a streaming service that I think Walmart had. It was basically like, you buy a Blu-ray or a DVD, and you get a digital version, and you have this library that you built up, and you had all these people who had access to this database of movies that they thought was theirs because they bought them and it was theirs, but then it got shut down, and their access was gone. And all these people are like, well, what happened to all the movies I got? It's like, because the consumer doesn't get it. They don't understand. Yes, it's digital, and that digital thing is in your house, and you think it's mine.
That's
not.
That's a little different than what this law is about, though.
Well, it's about the wording. It's just the wording.
Right, but I mean, the thing is, like, if Vudu shuts down, your license hasn't been revoked. It's just there's no good, right? Because, like, what you're licensed to is access to a movie on the cloud, and if that cloud is taken down, that license is worth zero. Right?
Yeah, I mean, mechanically it's a little different, but the whole point is just you don't own it. You don't really own it. It's like, either your license will go away or the cloud goes away or whatever it is, but the consumer doesn't realize it can disappear in a way that physical media doesn't.
I do think this distinction can be overstated, right? Like, it is true that, like, the license that you have for Echoes of Wisdom is on the cart, and that license cannot be revoked, but Nintendo can push a firmware update that makes all Switch hardware refuse to read your license, and you could technically never take your Switch online again or whatever else. But, like, you're still, even with physical media, now that everything's connected, you're still at the mercy of the seller.
Sort of, but, this is more about, I think, making companies, forcing them to be more open and transparent and honest through their language about what you really are getting for your money, which is why, when you hear the word buy, the connotations of I'm buying this is I own this now. Versus I'm renting this.
Do you know there's like a PC gamer adage? It's a little flippant, but it's like, if buying isn't owning, then piracy isn't stealing.
Yes. Yeah.
I have a hypothetical. Let's say this is in California right now, right? Let's say it did all across the states. I wonder what percentage shift happens that people who like digital only libraries, I understand it, but there are some people, like Robert said, that might not understand, in full. Yeah. What percentage shift, digital compared to physical, and if physical sort of makes some sort of comeback in a way. Yeah. I'm curious.
I think that's a really good question, Dom. I would actually like to see that myself.
I would be curious to see. I would wager on a 0% shift.
Really?
Yeah. I don't think it's going to make a difference. I think this is going to make a difference in terms of how educated people are. This is going to make people more aware of the nature of what they're quote unquote buying, but I don't think it's going to change purchasing behavior.
I don't think it'll change it, on the whole. I do think that it would, especially for people that are less tech literate, they understand the general gist of what they're doing, but don't understand on a deeper level what's really going on. I do think that to some degree it might make them think about it, think twice about it. Like if I'm buying something for my Kindle, if I'm buying a book for my Kindle, mainly for the convenience of having it on my Kindle, but I'm assuming that it's never going to get erased from my Kindle, because why would it? I bought it, right? And then you start to understand, the language changes in the store, on Amazon, and it's become more clear to you when you go to buy it. You get a pop-up that says, hey, actually, you're just buying the license and it can be revoked at any time. Would somebody then say, well, then fuck it, I'm just going to go buy the physical book. Forget it. I'm just going to never mind. Here's
a thought. If you would expect that if the information would lead to people being more interested in physical media, I feel like that is not congruent with PC players who are by far the most literate when it comes to like what ownership means or isn't, like the ethics of piracy, kind of media ownership, things like that. But that's also the populace that is living in an entirely digital world at this point, right? Like they're not like, F it, I'm gonna go build an x86 Pentium to replay Baldur's Gate. They're still like, I'm going to download the enhanced edition off Steam and play that, right? They're not like, F it, I'm going to switch to playing PS5 instead so I can have a disc copy. They're still like, they know all of this, right? They know that it's just a license that can be revoked. They're still doing it.
Sure, but we're not just talking about gaming at this point. This is all digital media. And in Dom's hypothetical of what happens if this goes across all 50 states and they all adopt a similar law, we're seeing the younger generations, for example, Gen Z, Gen Alpha, they're actually getting more. There's a resurgence of interest in physical things now, physical media. Vinyl, cassettes, even VHS is making a comeback now. People that are looking for old cameras, like obviously Polaroids and stuff like that, and old cameras have already been a thing for a while. But even things you wouldn't expect, camcorders, these kids are going out and looking for camcorders now, et cetera, et cetera. So if newer generations start saying, hey, I don't have to have everything digital. We do want to have everything physical again. This is why I brought up Sony future-proofing the PS5 Pro by still having the disk drive. If we see a greater demand across media and not just gaming because of laws like this, there could be a change in consumer behavior.
Well, I think what the larger net positive would be is if it starts a bigger conversation just kind of around things like how should digital ownership be handled just in general? Because take things like books, for example. If I buy a copy of a book digitally, I want that version that I bought. And I don't care if 10 years from now somebody deems part of the book to be offensive and then changes some of the words. I don't want that anywhere near what I paid for. But with the current setup, I believe there's nothing stopping from an Amazon from your Kindle updates, and then your books get changed. They change little bits and pieces because of whatever. Like, I think we need to start having larger conversations about preventing stuff like that, being able to transfer licenses. So it's like, I've mocked either on this podcast or elsewhere the idea of like, well, let's say I'm a father and I'm going to give my game collection to my kid. Well, let's say it's now, I have a digital collection, all these digital things on my whatever. Your legacy will be the login information that you give your son. Yeah. But what's not really thought about is that's not even guaranteed. Because they might start saying, well, if the user has died, then that account is just going to go dormant and all those purchases will disappear. So you wouldn't even be able to pass things down. And we're not at a point where that's really happening yet. But I could easily see companies doing something like that. They're already restricting you in terms of sharing Netflix passwords.
Yeah, Steam's already doing that. Steam has come out and said, I think there was some test case recently. They were like, no, you can't bequeath your Steam account to somebody else.
See, and I think and again, if this law does anything, it needs to start sparking conversations of like, well, I bought all that shit, And if I want to pass it on to somebody, I should be able to. And so if that leads to changes there, I would say it's a positive.
Yeah, one thing also, I'm not sure if, I don't know what the laws or policies around this are, but if you have something that gets removed from your library, is the consumer owed a refund? I don't know if anybody has already been having those discussions or not. I really don't know. But if this law causes people to examine that, I think that that's important too. I was just telling everyone at lunch this afternoon how I had the song "Killing an Arab" by The Cure in my iTunes library. I've had it there for it's at least I think like 15 years, but I didn't buy it from Apple. I ripped it from my dad's physical copy of the album Staring at the Sea, and it went from laptop to finally onto iPods and then onto my phones until it had to have been sometime this year is when I finally noticed it. I went to listen to it and it was gone, and that made me angry because no other songs from that album were gone. So clearly Apple had to have removed that song. Whether The Cure had issues with it, I don't know, maybe they thought it was offensive or something, or there were just other issues with licensing, I don't know. Whatever the reason is, Apple takes that song out of my library, and it wasn't even theirs to take. But if I had paid for that song, I sincerely doubt I would have gotten a notification that said there's 99 cents or $1.25 or something in your iTunes account. Because we, had to take it out of your library. So that's another issue, with having licenses to these things, and then the license is revoked, but you've paid for the license, but you no longer have access to the media. Am I owed a refund? Because you took my money. Did the license say, I had access to it, but only so long as we deem you can have access to it, and you're not entitled to a refund? There's a lot of questions there.
I think the straightforward answer is that no, you're not entitled to a refund, which... Obviously, if that were widespread, that would probably cause enough consumer sentiment uproar to at least get in front of some congressional subcommittee and then probably go nowhere. But it's just
more so the principle of all of these issues that stem from digital media and not really owning what you're buying.
Yeah, I do think, even though I said I think this will have a 0% impact on consumer behavior, I still think it's better that people know what they're buying, a license rather than a product, right? Yeah. Even if it doesn't change their behavior. That's true in general, right? I'd rather someone make educated poor decisions than uneducated poor decisions.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a good place to wrap things up.
I have one last comment I do want to make before we break.
Sure.
Just to call back to something earlier, I wanted to say that I thought Robert's exercise with the cranes and making people throw out the cranes they'd made was pretty cool.
Oh, thank you very much.
Cool or cruel? You said cool?
The latter is what makes it cool. The cruelty is what makes it cool. Hard lessons.
Hard lessons,
It didn't they... So I didn't want to say because I didn't want to. Yeah, it is cool and it is anything, but it kind of reminds me of the KGB, and the KGB would they'd make their agents raise a pet and raise it for months or years, and then they would force them to kill it.
Got darker.
I know. I didn't want to bring it up, but it did make me think of that. But obviously that's just cruel and not cool.
Same thing happens in the movie. Cool. Same thing happens in the movie The Kingsman, which I strongly recommend.
Oh God. Well, anyway,
Marines do that too. I think they have them raise a puppy and then they have to kill the puppy, or it's like a bunny and then they have to kill it and eat it.
Oh,
they get the mild version in my class. It's important, It's just I think it's important because it's all about. In the case of my lesson, not the Marines lesson, but the idea of being able to understand that not everything you make is great. I've worked with other creatives who become really tunnel visioned with their work, and I'll look at my work and scrutinize it maybe to my detriment, but then you have people who are on the opposite end who are making stuff, never hearing anything negative about it, and just again you become too precious about it. And it's no, it's take a moment, look back, the head's wrong, this is wrong, that's wrong. And it's not hearing that is, I think, really causing problems everywhere in it's virtually all of the entertainment industry, even comic books. I just told Angie and Zack that I was reading issue 3 of Uncanny X-Men, and that Logan is talking to Rogue, and they're in a kitchen, and he makes a comment about how there's a pot on the stove ready for her to cook something. And I'm like looking at the panel, I can see the stove, there's no pot. And so it's like, so where's the editor? Where's the editor to say, hey, these are great drawings, but you didn't draw the pot like you were supposed to? Like, is that guy going to fall apart because you didn't tell him, yeah, he messed up a little bit? Like, we have to be able to do those things. We have to be able to accept that we're not making great work all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe the pot was on a second stove just out of frame. Could have been one of those 2-stove apartments.
It was an invisible Wonder Woman pot.
I don't know that it was the KGB. It was the Soviets in my example. I think it was just like the Soviet, army, but not necessarily the KGB. Anyway, we deviated a lot there at the end, but thank you for sticking with us. This was a fun conversation. And hopefully we keep closing the gap between episodes. We're doing better. 7 months, a year, 7 months, 3 months. Hopefully it'll be a little sooner next time. But yeah, thanks for joining us.
Oh, one last thing before I forget. Shameless plug. I have another website. So as you know, basically everyone at this table is a Nintendojo worker. I run Nintendojo, right? There's a Nintendo news website. You should go to it.
We were on track for an episode under 2 hours for the first time in a year and a half until just now.
This is important. So